Welcome to the Hyperpolyglot Activist. Learn languages, make a difference. Here today, I'm joined by Salvatore Acerra. Salvatore, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlos.
All right, so my first question for you as a prospective member of HYPIA Research 2.0 will be, what is your language background and how is it related to your research?
Thank you for your question. My research background, started when I was very young. I been brought up in a family where we spoke at least three languages. My dad is from Italy, my mom is from the UK. We were born in Italy, then grew up basically in the UK. So in my family, we spoke at least Italian, English, and then my dad is from Naples, so we had the Neapolitan dialect as well. So I tried to now probably because of like the dialectal regional dialects that we spoke, I felt probably closer to minority languages in a way, and also like give
Mhm.
voice to like these dialects and the languages such as Valencian, which are like, always a huge debate, mostly in Spain. And that is
Wow.
probably what led me to also study Catalan, Euskera, Galician, and stuff like I want to feel closer to those like kind of like smaller languages, smaller communities, and give a bigger voice to those languages that nobody's ever heard of.
Mhm.
And my background is I studied Asian and African languages. So I speak Chinese, Japanese, Indonesian, and Swahili. And I wanted to, now I'm working in the field of comics and graphic novels, where I kind of like want to work in this kind of like Asian field where you can bring, all these kind of like, manga and comics from China, Japan, Korea, and bring them or make them known into the Western society and mostly obviously Europe. So what I'm doing is like I try to build this kind of like bridge and connection between, Stockholm, where I am right now, so Sweden, and the Netherlands, where I was a couple of months ago. So I've been working with these two universities in Stockholm and Tilburg, and also with associations with a Kyoto University, which is the Manga University of Kyoto. So like trying to bring and bridge all these kind of like communities together. That's what I'm working in right now, and also that's how our languages are related somehow because I'm working in translation for Chinese and Dutch. So I feel like those
Mhm.
very different languages, but trying to kind of like bring them together and see how we can create bridges rather than building up walls and separate them.
All
Mhm.
right, fascinating. So this language background is very, very rich indeed. And a few things that caught my attention. I noticed you
Mm.
made a distinction between Valencian and Catalan. So I take it that to you, these are two separate languages, right?
Well, if you come from Catalonia, maybe they will not be separate. But if you come from Valencia, it's very strong to always separate them.
Right, right. That was precisely my point, right? That well, language versus dialect disputes
Hmm.
cannot really be adjudicated by linguists, qua linguists, because they always
Yes.
refer to socio-political tensions, right, and
Hmm.
perspectives.
True.
The second thing that caught my attention is the non-Eurocentric approach
Mm.
from you, which
Hmm.
I think is very refreshing because, as you know, one of the central claims in critical polyglot studies is that
Mm.
whereas polyglossia presents itself as universal, it is actually very Eurocentric in its approach,
Yes.
in where the events take place, etc., right? And then the
Hmm.
third thing that caught my attention are graphic novels. So you
Mm.
talked about bringing cultural products from China, Japan, etc.,
Mm.
into the West. But out of all the genres, why graphic novels in particular? Is there anything that attracted you to that?
Yes, in a way, I feel like the reason why I moved to Valencia was like all weird to begin with. But then something, probably the universe, something called me to it because I met Paco Roca, who's actually a writer and a cartoonist from Valencia.
Uh-huh.
And I met him in person when there was the Feria de Libros in Viveros Garden. So I met him and I wrote my master's thesis on his works. And so I've been studying graphic novels because I started reading this author when I was back in England. And I
Mhm.
was the only one who could read Spanish back then. So I was reading his novels that were not translated yet. And now
Mhm.
I'm working closely with him to translate his works into Chinese. So, because when I was doing my master's degree, in my class, we were 36 people, but all of them Chinese and only four from European countries. So I
Mhm.
was always next to the lecturer, standing and translating the whole class in Chinese because like all the Chinese students they could not comprehend Spanish.
Mhm.
So then when obviously I was telling them about this Paco Roca guy and like how his works were like worth reading, and they're like, oh, we wish we could read them, but they're all in Spanish. So I talked to Paco Roca and his manager, and I was like, I could translate your works in Chinese, and that's what I'm doing right now. So I felt
Mhm.
like I wanted to continue in this kind of like field that is not explored. I feel like it's very niche.
Right.
Everybody, yes, is translating audiovisual translation, literal translation, but nobody talks about these combination like multimodal images plus onomatopoeias, which are like sounds, and then
Right.
text, right? And I feel like also now with all these AI, artificial intelligence, that can translate everything. I feel like the humor related to a picture is not there yet. I feel like
Right.
human intervention is still needed in those kinds of fields and texts, discourses.
Right. Mhm.
So yeah, I feel like now I'm working with Alice Oseman, the writer of Heartstopper. You probably watched the Netflix TV show. There's like now the sixth volume will come out in July.
No,
Yes, this month.
I'm not familiar at all with
Oh
this, and
no!
some people in this audience might not be. So, could you please tell us about it from a ground level?
Sure. Yes. So Heartstopper is was born as a web comic on Tapas,
Okay.
and it's basically just a novel on of like two boys that meet at rugby practice and in class. They're at high school and they just started falling in love. But I feel like the texts and also the themes that come up are like friendship, but also homophobia, transphobia, racism. There's
Right.
like a lot of like
Right.
themes related.
Mm.
And my thesis currently is focusing on translation studies and gender studies combined into
Mm.
one work.
Right.
So I feel
Mhm.
like, at least we can explore those two kind of like big spheres, but not in works already seen in the past, but in new genre, which is graphic novel. And probably this, let's just say that this one is like the opposite kind of like bridge, right? In the master's degree was like, bringing the Asian people into the known of let's just say probably European
Mhm.
cartoonist and illustrator. And now I feel like it's probably doing the opposite side, is also like taking kind of like well-known graphic, because I feel like of course Alice Oseman, she's famous all over the world, so like everybody knows
Right.
it, but also see how those cultural references and also the gender and the sexuality references within her works may change, be censored, and be altered in different cultures slash different countries. So I feel like something worth noticing would also be probably looking at the Russian translation. Well, there are no graphic novels in Russian, but you can see the audiovisual translation of the TV
Mhm.
show being
Mhm.
translated. And I feel like I'm pretty sure most of the audience will probably be familiar with Heartstopper. The new volume is gonna come up this month, so I really recommend that. If you don't want to
Mhm.
read it, there's like a Netflix TV show that you guys can
Right.
watch. So
Okay, all right.
yeah.
Then there's that recommendation right there. If you have watched Heartstopper, please write a comment down below. And that brings me to my next question. So I was about to ask you,
Yeah.
what's the critical polyglot status in the research that you
Mm,
do? You already brought something important, which is an angle we haven't explored yet in critical polyglot status, which is the gender
mm,
angle. Are there any other
mhm.
socio-political angles that are of your interest when it comes to studying languages?
Yeah. So I feel like probably the first one is one that you already mentioned. It's kind of
Mhm.
like non-European centric kind of like
Right.
languages, giving
Mhm.
voice to, first of all, maybe smaller communities, like not
Right.
very well known, and also maybe bridging, this kind of like, Asian languages and then European languages. So like
Right.
not just focus, the book is originally in English language and maybe the Paco Roca's volume is in originally in Spanish, but then trying to bring it to other cultures and see how they would translate. And also mostly this one from Alice Oseman, Heartstopper, the whole series is filled with those themes that are really challenging to translate into render in other cultures. For like, of
Mhm.
course, when it comes to transsexuality, asexuality are some new terms, new neologism, like a lot
Right.
of people have never heard of, and maybe in some cultures they're still new to it. And I feel like, of course, you're
Mhm.
trying to create a bridge, but also create like an understanding of
Mhm.
new themes, new ideologies, and maybe new trends that are coming out.
Right.
Also when it comes to cultural references. And I feel like that's probably my point. Pragmatics, like how, in Spanish, you can say just one sentence, but depending on your intonation, it may change in meaning, right?
Right.
So for
Mhm.
like, sometimes we need a multimodal text because the help,
Yes.
the aid
Mhm.
of a picture makes us understand whatever the speaker is
Right.
talking about, is
Right.
referring
Yeah.
to. So I feel
Yeah.
like it would be interesting also to see this kind of like, gestuality and
Yeah.
how these facial expressions change
Mhm.
all over the different countries and cultures.
Yeah,
Yes.
that
Mm,
definitely resonates with my
mm,
own research. I published the first LGBTQIA terminology in Ladino, and
mhm.
a lot of people in the community were not ready for that. So it's a very conservative community when it comes to
Yeah.
language. as a manifestation of everything else. And
Hmm.
so that gave way to very interesting debates. Now I'm writing a textbook about Ladino, and
Oh
I'm
yeah.
also having to navigate that aspect. It's the first textbook to contain a reference to non-binary gender forms. So
Yes. Hmm.
yes, that's definitely fascinating. And so my last question would be, do you have any specific publication plans for the next few years? Have you targeted any journals or any book series in your mind, or are you hoping to figure things out along the way? How do you look at that?
Yeah, well, that's a very hard question right now because I'm about to finish my PhD studies. So I'm in my third and hopefully last year. So I would expect to graduate by the end of this year. So between
All right,
October and
fingers crossed,
December this
inshallah.
year.
Okay.
Thank you, inshallah. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, so definitely I'm now probably with the help of like my two supervisors. I feel like they are the ones recommending me journals to publish in and
All
maybe
right.
somewhere where they published in the past. I've already published a one book chapter
Mhm.
within the UPV, which is the Polytechnic University of Valencia, so within
Right.
the
Mhm.
community.
Mhm.
And then another one with Acerra, which is one of the biggest linguistics program. So
Mhm.
that's at least like,
Mhm.
a bit bigger. So hopefully, during and after these PhD course, I would be able to publish more. That's why when I saw and read about this opportunity with like the with the Hyperpolyglot Association, I was like, definitely I'm a member, and I would love
Yeah.
to do some research. I want to publish something,
Yeah. Yeah.
extra.
Yeah.
Then why
Check,
not? I
check,
was
check.
like,
Yes.
yeah, I ticked all the boxes. I was like, yeah, let's go.
Yes. Yes,
So yeah,
definitely. And we were very happy to assist you with that. And I'm really looking forward to our collaboration. And
thank
we
you.
will, I congratulate you for the publications that you already have because it's very difficult to publish and write the thesis at the same time. So that's something there, but we can take it to the next level, hopefully. Yes.
Thank you. I hope
All right.
so.
Thank you so much, Salvatore.
Thank
And
you.
I look forward to collaborating with you further.
Likewise.
All
Thank you so
right. Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Right. So let me